This is why I love the PZ27 carburetor. Cold start. Hey tubers, welcome back for another adventure. So when you're working on all-terrain vehicles, and assuming you want them to start and you want them to start reliably, there's basically three legs on that stool. First thing you need is the sound engine, right? You know, the timing has to be right, compression, and all that other trivia. So once you have a sound engine, and believe it or not, most all-terrain vehicles, even if they're pretty beat up and pounded and so forth, the engines are typically pretty sound. Even the China stuff, the engines hold up much longer than the bodies do. So let's assume you have a sound engine. Then you only need two other things. If you have a portable CDI and good carburation, right, the things will start. For a lot of the bigger bore stuff, this is the kind of carburetor they have. It's a Mikuni or a Mikuni clone, constant velocity, cable choke. It pulls a plunger out to set the choke and all. These are good performing carburetors. I mean, if you're going out there to race, they're great for that. They're a little finicky, especially when they get old and corroded and, you know, 1,000 amateur hands have been inside. These are a little harder to bring back to life, right? So, if you manage to hack yourself a PZ27 onto an engine, you're going to get it to start up and run. And I typically do that. Now, I've done videos on how to make an adapter flange, and recently I figured out how to improve on that, how to do it a little cheaper and a little better. I seem to use these carburetor adapters quicker than I could build them. If you look at the PZ27, you can see it bolts on, and you can see this guy is a flange. Now, I discovered that the best piece to use for the flange is, let me see if I'm showing it to you. That says this is a 1 1/4 inch cap. If you buy them bulk on eBay, you get them for about $3 each. If you buy them at Home Depot, they're $5, $6, Lowe's, whatever. So 1 1/4 inch cap, not all that hard, right? In the center of that 1 1/4 inch cap, you start drilling a hole. The kind of bit that works the best is, so you want to use tapered bits, starting with the smaller one, moving to the larger one. I find, generally speaking, well, forget generally speaking, you want to use a hole punch so that your bit doesn't skip all around. I normally first hole punch for the center. That's an 1/8 inch bit. Then moving up to this. For the plate, I typically use brass or copper. I get it up at P&T Surplus. You can get it over the internet, or quite honestly, if you're any good at soldering and you clean things up pretty well, you could just use some thin plate steel and solder that on up. I, once again, prefer brass or copper. To get these holes in the right place, I make up these little patterns. It's easy when you have graph paper, because you can kind of look through the holes in the carburetor and line things up and so forth. Or if you have a gasket, or you can kind of trace things out, kind of use the repeat, you know, kind of each one you make gets a little bit closer, kind of fail and repeat until you get it exactly the way you want it. So graph paper for the holes, there you are. You can see how it's centered. You can see the little punch throughs. I'm making this particular adapter for the 300cc Bayou. You can see this Carb is a clone, and I think they said it might have caught fire. So rather than spend all that time messing with this and going crazy, I think it's just going to be easier to replace it, right? I'll just smash a PZ27 or a PZ30 on this with the adapter. When it comes to cutting up the brass or steel plate, whatever you're using as your backer, I use the 4-inch grinder. And you know what, you can leave plenty of material behind. Don't feel as if you have to get all that close. The neater the job you do, the better the whole thing comes out. You know, it looks like it belongs there instead of looking like a piece of junk. One could also, you know, work this way backwards, so you're more the size of the carburetor flange itself, right? So it's both the same size. And then if you paint the adapter black, quite honestly, I'm not even sure people would notice that it's on there, right? If you go to sell it and you hit the throttle, it fires right up. They ride it and they say, well, yeah, it runs good. Maybe it doesn't have as much performance as I remember. And once again, the Mikuni carburetor, all tuned properly, will perform better. It'll be, you know, more than adequate for a used machine getting out there to romp and have some fun. Before one even attempts to solder, make sure you clean things up pretty well. I like to have a hole in the cap. That way I'm able to line things up well, right? It allows me to make sure that they're aligned well to each other. It also gives me a way of getting some solder underneath, in between the cap and the plate, and making, you know, seeing that it wets. Right, there you go. So by having a hole in the plate and in the cap, I'm able to kind of align things up. I'm able to solder around the edge here without getting solder on the face of the plate that I'm going to be bolting up to the carburetor. And also, I don't get a bunch of solder goobers all over the flange, so to speak, where I'm going to be sliding this into the Bayou 300 carburetor mount. So now all I have to do is use a marker. I'm actually probably going to bolt the carburetor right up to it. Use a marker to redraw, and then I'll clean it up, and then I'll just kind of ream this out. It reams fairly easily using those step bits. I'll just ream this out. Depending on the bore of the carburetor, like if I end up using a PZ30, just kind of ream this out a little bigger. And if you use the much bigger carburetor, I think it's a PZ32, you could just ream it to size. I haven't bought a PZ32 yet, but I think for the bigger engines that'll work. I think I'd like to try one on that Grizzly over there. So you might see that in the future. Right, a PZ27, that's pretty small, but you know, 5 millimeters, right? You're starting to get into a little bit of space there. Well, probably more like that, right? So it increases that diameter of the hole quite a bit. Okay, here we are, all done, all ready to slide into the flange and to bolt the carburetor onto. A lot of times I'll use a paper gasket here, one of my own cardboard ones. Yep, all ready to go. So I've been asked to make this video, and I did. Hopefully it's helpful to Chris, and it's all ready to go. Theoretically, this could have been reamed out a little more. One just has to make sure there's enough meat so that one can seal a gasket around there. Right. Anyway, I really want to thank everybody for dropping by to watch and comment and subscribe. You know, as you work on these things, you decide to get some more equipment, and you kind of get a little better at it, and you kind of work the steps a little differently. And once again, before you know it, you'll be able to make a piece that looks like jewelry. There we are. Once again, I want to thank everybody for dropping by to watch, comment, subscribe. Remember, feet down, heads up, and get out and enjoy each and every day. Bye now.